I've wanted to talk about surrealism in Berserk for a very long time. I think the first time anybody reads or watches Berserk, the one thing which lingers with them the longest is the absolute feeling of dread that comes from the Eclipse, illustrated and conveyed as though through the lens of a dream, or rather a nightmare. This element of the story always struck me as something which Kentaro Miura, Berserk's author, artistically sought after. You could argue that it's what made Berserk, especially now that we're only just seeing the further repercussions of the Eclipse. The idea behind surrealism in its broadest and therefore most accepted sense is the artistic expression of the unconscious mind. The major figures behind this movement, Salvador Dali, André Breton, Max Ernst and René Magritte, all produced quite profound work which displayed an abstract quality. Countless artists were inspired by this movement: Walt Disney, David Lynch, Isao Takahata, Hideaki Anno and Satoshi Kon, to name a few. Miura sets up the Eclipse to achieve a heightened emotional impact from its audience. By setting up an ambiguous background for Guts in the first arc, and never really elaborating on what twisted this man so badly, we then get a glimpse into the normal human lives of his comrades. These characters come across as very realistic and with very real problems. By the end, we have Guts wanting to seek his own way in life, Griffith letting self-destructive tendencies get the better of him, Guts and Casca falling in love but not being able to leave the Band of the Hawk due to Griffith's condition. And these problems cascade into a tragedy which goes beyond anybody's expectations. The realistic world of Berserk is challenged whenever the Apostles pay the band a visit. Nosferatu Zod's fight with Guts and Griffith, Rosine and the Count destroying the Hawk's injured, and Wild almost killing Griffith and destroying half of the Hawk's numbers. Miura plants the seeds of the Eclipse by bringing these characters to the forefront as horrifying monsters who are almost impossible to defeat. When Griffith runs away from the band and Guts chases after him, the landscape of Apostles converging instills a sense of dread into us. Guts almost died taking down Wild, and the only reason Guts and Griffith survived their fight with Zod was due to the fact that Zod retreated after seeing the Behelit. When we see this field full of Apostles, we know that our protagonists are out of luck. And with this grim beginning to the Eclipse, everything begins to fall apart. The ground takes the likeness of millions of faces contorted with pain. 4 monstrous entities collectively named the God Hand emerge. When Void brands the Band of the Hawk, the Apostles begin murdering and eating every last one of them. The realism of the Golden Age is completely abandoned for surrealism in the Eclipse. The world as we knew it is gone, and our characters have travelled from a physical and familiar world to one of terror and unfamiliarity. The Eclipse itself is a horrifying gaze into hell, with pools of blood, strewn corpses, and bloodthirsty creatures. Characters we love and characters we love to hate all die in this morbid display. The sudden and absolute disregard for any sense of realism defies everything prior to this point in the Golden Age, and enhances the level of terror that we feel from the Eclipse. Moments ago, Griffith seemed complacent with a disabled life, dreaming of himself still attaining something. And yet the smile that he gives to Guts as he betrays all of his comrades is a haunting reminder of the cold and ruthless mercenary that Griffith always was. The scenery and composition of the Eclipse is very reminiscent of surrealist art, with vast expanses that seemingly go on for leagues, structures and persons that logically do not make any sense, and yet Miura takes these elements and creates a disturbing backdrop for the end to most of our protagonists' lives. Miura creates an unsettling world from the get-go, not allowing us any comfort for any portion of the Eclipse. The Eclipse's nightmare imagery doesn't end here, however, with Griffith seemingly descending through different layers of the astral world until he reaches quite literally the heart of all evil, the idea of evil. In the minds of readers, the politics and warfare of a Renaissance world are still fresh in mind, and yet Kentaro Miura has taken us to a very dark place, exposing the ultimate villain of the series by making us love him, then pity him, and then by understanding him. In Griffith's conversation with the idea of evil, it is made abundantly clear that his purpose is to give meaning. Mankind desired a reason for their suffering, and for their absurd, pointless deaths. The idea of evil gives them some meaning by creating the God Hand to assign sacrifices, create destruction, and push towards an unknown agenda. The idea of evil is quite similar to the concept of surrealism. Using art as a medium for the expression of the unconscious mind is similar to how the idea of evil takes the collective unconscious of humanity and expresses this through the real world. Griffith's form as a God Hand member, Femto, is born, and he begins his life of evil by raping Casca in front of Guts. The following pages are some of the most haunting in all of manga. In explicit detail, we see the horror of Femto destroying the remainder of what we came to love in the Golden Age arc. There's this one panel in the manga where Guts watches the rape despite Casca's tearful notion for him to look away. Blood begins to weep down from Guts' eye, clouding the scene, and yet he still watches on as his eye is gouged out. This panel is just so heartbreaking and horrifying at the same time that I dare say when Guts screams, the title of Berserk is completely brought to life through Miura's art. In this one devastating panel, we watch from his perspective as everything is torn apart. The feelings displayed here conjure a response of anger and sadness from the reader. When seeing this final scream, with everything around the two consisting of pure nightmare fuel, the audience, for the first time, truly feels the meaning behind the title, Berserk. We can almost feel Guts' emotions through the artwork. It's such an emotional ending to what the two had built up to that it makes for one of the most brutal and tragic endings of any arc in all of manga. For the rest of the series, surreal imagery is common when depicting the entities of the astral world. The Eclipse and the Tower of Conviction appear quite surreal, going beyond the sense of realism begun in the Golden Age and instead depicting grotesque, disturbing imagery which can be read deeper than surface level. The world transformation and the introduction of Elfhelm welcomes us to the Fantasia Arc, in which many things appear fantastical and turn surrealism into something much more profound in the universe of Berserk. The idea of evil states that its own existence stems from the deep desire of mankind wanting a reason for death and a reason for the misery in their lives. And so it makes sense that in order to gain control, Griffith brings humanity what they desired all along. Fantasia, a polar opposite to death and misery. Fantasia brings life in forms only once imagined and told in tales by mankind. It rids mankind of misery by giving them a safe haven in Falconia and a leader to guide them through the darkness of this world. The irony in this is that the leader who promises goodness and purity is secretly hiding his persona of pure evil from everyone. We see all of these beautiful panels and fantastical locations, and yet the reader is always made aware of who we are following in the story. That's why when the cracks begin to show, we get so excited and overjoyed. Because Griffith's paradise isn't a paradise at all. It's the same exact world as usual. If not even worse with the astral creatures roaming around. The only good thing about this world, Falconia, is purely aesthetical and serves not the people, but more so Griffith's ego and desire for power. Elfhelm is similar in Guts and Casca's case. Guts is finally restoring his beloved, and she is actually brought back. She is given this amazing outfit from the Flower Storm Queen, and there is this idyllic scenery on the island as Casca approaches Guts with fond memories. The appearance of these panels harkens back to classical fairy tales, which features a strong masculine hero who saves a beautiful damsel in picturesque backdrops. But only at the last second does reality begin to seep in. This Fantasia setting isn't enough to take away from the all too real, or rather surreal, trauma that was inflicted onto the two. Casca sees Guts and instantly is brought back to the Eclipse. Her lover, who she bonded over in the most beautiful way, is unfortunately reduced to a reminder of her trauma. The idea of Fantasia within the Fantasia Arc is actually an oxymoron by Miura, to tell us that this world, despite all of its apparent beauty and change, isn't too different from the one that we were already in. Thank you very much for watching. Be sure to subscribe for more, follow me on Twitter to see what I'm up to next, and make sure to like the video and comment your thoughts down below. If you want to support content like this, then please consider
buying me a coffee. The link is in the description below.
If you do, I will give you my personal thanks at this section of the video. Apart from that, I have to say thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.